Welcome in the next episode of Pragmatic Talks, where again we have our great guest, Gojko Adzic.
Thank you.
Again, we are at the ACE conference, but in the previous episode we spoke about the specification by example. Right now, let's talk about the impact mapping. Welcome to Pragmatic Talks, a podcast and video series where we discuss startups, contemporary digital product development, modern technologies, and product management. Where the idea of impact mapping came from?
Well, if I understand correctly, because impact mapping is not my idea, it's an idea that was developed by a Swedish interaction design agency called In Use. The idea came from trying to prevent the Swedish government from wasting money on failed IT projects, because they were kind of working with local governments there, trying to figure out how do we actually kind of focus on building the right things and not waste a stupid amount of time doing the wrong things, because that's one of the big plagues in our industry. You know, that's I read relatively recently this book called Do It Wrong Quickly by Mike Moran, and he talks about how Netflix in their early days, they considered about 90% of what they were doing to be wrong. There was a lovely book that came out recently by Ron Kohavi, who was in charge of experimentation at Microsoft. It's called Trustworthy Online Experiments. Phenomenal book. I kind of strongly recommend everybody reads it. It has statistics from Google, Slack, Microsoft on kind of success rates for ideas. And it's not good. More than half of the ideas people try are just not good. Sometimes, 8 out of 10 ideas that people think they'll create a massive business impact just don't create any impact, and or they actually cause the opposite thing to happen from what you wanted to do. And I think that is a huge constraint of our industry today, where essentially nobody really knows if what we're doing is right or wrong. In 80s, early 90s, people were automating existing processes. You would build accounting software based on a process that accountants worked on for the last 50 years. So we're just making things that already existed, but on a computer. But today, most of the products are built on stuff that was caused by computers, or new things that did not exist or were not stable enough to be kind of just translated into on a computer, and nobody really knows what's going to happen. And people can spend an insane amount of time and money for no impact. And that's where kind of the idea of impact mapping came from. How do we at least get some better idea of success and figure out what we're doing and course correct if we can still correct the course when we spot we're doing the wrong things.
Okay, so how does it work? How does it help to eliminate the things that doesn't make sense? How does it improve the way we are focusing on the things that make an impact?
So impact mapping is a visualization technique. It's there to help stakeholders, senior technical people, clarify where they think the value is coming from, and then figure out how they will evaluate and measure that value, and then break it down into something that's kind of more optional and provide multiple options for developing the same values, so that we can kind of come up with better ideas and measure whether we're going the right direction. And the idea is basically to visualize 4 different things and how they connect. It's visualize the deliverables that with our work, then visualize the value of that, but visualize the value of that in a way that we can measure in the short term. And with impact maps, the way we do that is by looking at what are the behavior changes that we're causing, with the idea that if we do some work and our users still behave in absolutely the same way as before, we just wasted time. If we do some work and our users do something better, faster, cheaper, more easily, then we're providing value to them. If we do some work and people are doing this less accurately or slower or whatever, then we're kind of, creating a negative impact. So the idea of basic impact mapping is kind of that behavior changes are a good way to measure value in the short term. And then these things, the next level is like, whose behavior are we changing? Are we changing the behavior of large customers, small customers, users in Poland, and then making clarity around that, and then kind of how that connects to large organization business goals. The lots of business strategies. I don't know who originally said this. I'm trying to remember, but I like the name very much. It's kind of like an air sandwich. You have the business goals, you have the stuff you do, and then there's like the thing in between is like thin air. And usually, people say, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and it's going to be like very profitable. And the problem with that is, by the time you're able to measure if it's very profitable or not, it's too late to kind of do any changes in that. And we need something in the middle. We need a way of measuring value in the short term. And that's where these behavior changes come in, because behavior changes are observable quickly and they're objective. They're not somebody's opinion. So connecting this and visualizing that allows us to then say, okay, let's do 10 days of work on this, or let's do 1 day of work or 2 weeks of work on this, and let's see if we're causing this behavior change or not. If yes, this was a good idea. We can invest more money in that, we can invest more time. If not, kind of we need to reevaluate our assumptions. And impact maps are good because they help us externalize and visualize assumptions, they help us challenge assumptions, and then they help us spot if things are going in the right direction or not, while we can still influence the success of the product.
You already mentioned what the impact mapping is, but I know that many teams, many people are making some mistakes with trying to implement impact mapping. So probably you have way more observations. So from your point of view, what are the most common mistakes that people are making?
So the most common mistake that people are making are skipping the level in the middle. And again, creating an air sandwich. And they create this visualization that's a task breakdown. And they have like a business goal and then epics, and then and it's all about the work they need to do, because that's what people are concerned about, the work they need to do. And they kind of skip having this level of behavior change or that allows us to actually measure what we're doing instead of just measuring that we're doing the stuff we plan to do. And another thing that kind of is a common way of getting this thing wrong is to overcomplicate it and to try to put all the possible actors and all the possible behavior changes there and not think about really, hey, this is like, one way of reaching the goal, let's try that goal out. If it doesn't work, we'll do something else. And trying to be too detailed up front and use it as a 10-year plan instead of here's my next milestone.
Could you tell us a bit more, about some examples of using impact mapping? There are quite a few in the book that you wrote more than 10 years ago, but maybe you have some more recent examples, maybe some examples from your projects, your products that you've been using that where impact mapping was helpful.
Well, I mean, I use impact mapping quite a lot to kind of clarify what we need to do and where we need to go with this. And for example, we had this, one of my products is a mind mapping tool. It's a collaboration tool, and we kind of use impact maps very often there when we're designing a new milestone. We had this thing where we wanted to get to become number 2 in the market, and to do that, one of the ideas was to get people to have a much better first-time experience and to kind of come back more frequently after this first-time experience. And we had like a ton of ideas how to do that. There was lots of different things we needed to do, and actually one of the kind of things that we were looking at was getting people who were on mobile devices to get a better experience. And of course, you can start immediately thinking, well, a native mobile app, all of these other things. But one of the improvements we thought about was just like replacing a toolbar for people on mobile devices with something that's easier to scroll and they can get into this quickly, and making it much, much simpler, leaving fewer options for people to do. That was consistent with the behavior change we wanted to create for the audience we wanted to create. Again, you have this deliverable behavior change audience and then the business goal. And when we've done that, actually that created such a big impact that we decided not to do anything else on that map. It was more than enough for kind of what we needed to do. And one of the things I like about behavior changes, again, is you can discuss the magnitude of the change. If we're saying people need to come back more frequently, well, how much more frequently? What percentage of those people? And we can set some targets for that. And then you can do some work and you say, well, yes, I've done it. Yes, I have 20 other user stories in my backlog for the same thing, but this one actually achieved the magnitude of the change I wanted it to achieve. So the other user stories are not that important anymore.
I also found out that when using impact mapping, often, as you said, when people are skipping this middle part of the impact map, sometimes they are not skipping it because they don't want to do this or forget to do this, but sometimes they just cannot figure out how the behavior will change. And actually, this is the sign that those tasks, those requirements that they figure out are not the one that they should implement, at least not the one they should implement to achieve this business goal at the end.
Possibly, and as you said, there's quite a lot of risks there. If you don't really know what's going to happen, maybe some experimentation, maybe a prototype, maybe, but at the same time, maybe this is just a pet feature that nobody really needs.
Yeah, it's just something, looks shiny, it's nice, but at the end of the day, it doesn't change anything.
It doesn't change anything,
just increase the cost.
Yes.
What about using impact mapping outside of software development? I found it actually really useful when I was working with HR departments and with our HR department as well, to show that some changes in our processes or in the organization could really have an impact on our business objectives at the company. But maybe you have another example outside.
I come across a couple of teams that were using impact maps as a way of changing their own internal process in the organization. There is actually a person who wrote a couple of books about something very similar to impact mapping applied to HR 15, 20 years ago. He's called Robert Brinkerhoff. I came across his books by basically searching for impact mapping on Amazon to see what's going on, and figuring out there's this whole area, around impact in human resource development. That's how they call it. It's very, very kind of HR. As an idea of, figuring out what are the impacts of our work. It's not really just related to software, but my work is mostly software. I don't tend to work in other areas, but yes, as you said, I have seen some people do it for process change, some people do it for kind of learning in their organizations and for HR. And I think in theory, you could apply this in other areas. I don't get enough opportunity to do that.
I've seen many times that people try to combine impact mapping with other tools, also with the specification by example that we talked previously, but also with things like OKRs, objective key results. What do you think about it? And do you think that there are other tools that are complementary for impact mapping?
So there's like a whole space of these things that are, trying to get people to focus better. Most of them are actually complementary. And you mentioned OKRs. OKRs are another way of hierarchically breaking things down. And I think where impact maps and OKRs overlap is where you get to a level of a product milestone. Then the objective is probably the goal of the impact map. The key results are the behavior changes of the users or some stakeholder group or something like that. And then, your OKRs can continue to break down later. So there's quite a nice overlap of that. Melissa Perry has these canvases that like the product strategy canvas that it's a really kind of interesting way of, again, looking at vision and target conditions and constraints and things like that. And lots of these experimentation techniques work kind of really well in the overlap with impact mapping, because impact maps can help you direct the experiments. They can say, well, this is the behavior change we want to create. Go and do some research for that. Spec by example is also kind of complementary to that, because once you figure out the impact you want to create, you can start thinking about, how to do that. User story mapping is another kind of good technique that's really complementary there, because an impact map as a visualization is hierarchical, and it's kind of a mind map. It's a diagram, so it's not really suitable for capturing hundreds and hundreds of stories. It's more kind of suitable for capturing high-level deliverables. But then if you want to break down this, epic into a more detailed plan, a story map can be much better because it's tabular and allows you to kind of visualize different dimensions of that. For me, an impact map is mostly a visualization that is there to help stakeholders and senior technical people just get all the assumptions out quickly. And then you do have all these other things that, help with structuring that in a development process and taking it further.
Great. Okay, so thank you for the explanation. If anyone would like to learn more about the impact mapping, they first need to read the book.
Well, yeah, and there's quite a good community website, impactmapping.org, where lots of different people have contributed their case studies, examples, and things like that. And there's a basic explanation of the process there as well. They don't need to read the book, but impactmapping.org would be the first kind of thing to do. And I do still kind of run some educational workshops around that. The Product Owner Key Skills workshop happens kind of every couple of months. So that would be kind of another way of learning about impact mapping as well.
Mm-hmm. And in Poland, you run it with Prognoita as well?
In Poland, the Prognoita is the company to kind of organize it. So if you're interested in impact mapping, go to the Prognoita website, look at the Product Owner Key Skills workshop, and maybe see you there.
Thank you very much for that discussion, and I hope you will enjoy the rest of the conference. I know you are running for your keynote, so
Thank you very much.
Don't want to take your time anymore. So also, if you would like to learn more about what Gojko has to say, also check the video recording from the ACE Conference 2024 that will be released pretty soon, most probably, where you will find Gojko Adzic keynotes that he will perform in the next less than half an hour. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Pragmatic Talks is delivered to you by Pragmatic Coders, the first choice software development partners for startup founders. Be sure to catch all new episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast channels. And if you are thinking about building your own startup or struggling with product development, contact us and find out what we can do together.